For our latest installment of our interviews with international officers and officer candidates and their staff, we are pleased to be joined by Victoria Orifice, Phi Theta Kappa International Vice President for Division One from the New England region. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. And for our viewers, just go ahead and give a brief intro of yourself in terms of college, chapter, etc.
Of course, and thank you so much for having me. So I'm from the Asnuntuck Community College in Enfield, Connecticut, Alpha Lambda Zeta chapter. I've had several officer positions at this chapter. Most recently, I have been elected Vice President of Leadership. I also have served as a regional officer for the New England region. I've been regional president and actually had the opportunity to serve a second time as Vice President at large this past year. I absolutely, love PTK. I've been in here for quite a while, and not getting rid of me anytime soon. So honored to have an opportunity to continue serving for another year as Division I Vice President.
So you see a lot of the directions that we try to take this interview is to get a feel for where the international officer candidates came from the outset in terms of what sparked their interest in Phi Theta Kappa. So give us the early scoop on what in your early days at your college piqued your interest about Phi Theta Kappa and what made you interested in becoming more and more and more involved with your chapter and then regionally and beyond.
Yeah, of course. So when I started at Asnuntuck, I was kind of fairly isolated. I didn't really know that many other people that were attending Asnuntuck at the time, and I was kind of trying to figure out where my friend groups are, like most of us do when we start a new place. So first semester went by, and I was kind of getting a feel for everything. Like our Student Government Association is really active, our Campus Activities Board, and then, I started hearing about PTK here and there and seeing what projects they were doing from very much the outside. Then that next semester, I got my invite. I was my psychology professor, actually, Heather DiOrlando, sent me a message. It was an online class at the time, and just asked me, she informed me that I had been accepted, that I'd achieved the minimum requirements to join Phi Theta Kappa, and it invited me to one of the meetings. So I went, and I was like, wow. I was completely blown away by what this organization was doing and what my chapter was doing, or the chapter that would become my chapter. I made a couple friends, a couple good contacts, and was just really drawn in by the scholarly research element and the focus on academics. And then so I went to a couple more meetings, and then I kind of I've maybe missed a couple since for, unforeseen reasons, but that was kind of the start of it. And then I kind of got pulled right in. I ran for an officer position as soon as I could. I served as Vice President of Communications initially. So running just communications between the chapter, and we were a very, very small chapter. We've always been a small chapter. Our college only has a couple thousand people in it, but at the time we had a decent chunk of people for the spring semester when I joined, but when I got really active was in the summer, and we were down to 2-3 people. So I took on more of the research end of things, got really involved in the projects, and then that fall it was just okay, this is it. Ran for regional office the next spring, and the rest is pretty much history. Just everything that this organization does, being a part of it, being part of making a change on my campus and getting to know administration on my campus, that was another big one, because I have a lot of really close advisors, I guess for lack of a better term, within administration now through my efforts with Phi Theta Kappa. So I absolutely love it. Every step of the way has been phenomenal.
You keep mentioning,
go ahead.
You keep mentioning research. Is that something that you're interested in? Is that kind of part of what you're looking towards in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I'm still trying to, cards on the table. I'm not totally sure where I'm going after this. I'm still a little on the fence about where I actually want to get into academically following community college. It's something I'm really trying to do some soul searching on this next year. But research is something that's always been very important to me, and especially through the projects that we've done, I've had a very heavy hand in, helping lead the research and doing it. It's something I've always greatly enjoyed. So to some extent, yes.
Cool.
What would you say, and this is, you'll see that we've asked everyone this question already, but about your college as a whole, what did you enjoy the most, and what do you think being a small institution makes it conducive to students becoming active and involved with the chapter?
The family environment. Asnuntuck's it's a mission statement is to in part to provide an affordable, accessible, nurturing environment. And they really have that. You know all your professors, the administration knows you, you can get an appointment with a dean if you need to talk about something. And it's that kind of atmosphere. It just really brings students up, especially bringing students who come from a shakier background academically, which I am definitely one of them. Like my experience in high school, I won't get into right now, but it wasn't the best by any means. But my experience at Asnuntuck, it's definitely the family atmosphere and the combination of actually non-traditional and traditional students. That's one thing that I think about community colleges overall is one of the key elements that makes it work, because you're not just learning from your professors, you're learning from the other students, from the life experiences that they've had, and like what they bring to the table and to group discussions is so phenomenal. So I think all of those different features come together to make community college, and my college in particular, very exceptional.
Would you, one thing that we always try to stress with our own members is the tremendous and infectious sense of pride that Phi Theta Kappa members build in having the responsibility of representing their community college to the public at large. And because everyone inherently has that belief that the community college system is an important educational opportunity for people with all the different backgrounds, as you just mentioned, how is the reward and the pride that you get out of having that opportunity to potentially be the means by which people in your community learn about what your college has to offer and take advantage of opportunities that might not do so otherwise?
It's immeasurable. Like I can't quantify, like I don't have the words for that particular feeling, but just that's one of the many reasons that I ended up running for international office is Asnuntuck is like, from the bottom of my heart, it saved my life. It's an incredible organization and institution, I guess. Phi Theta Kappa is an incredible organization, but having the opportunity to represent both at this level, it's something that I don't take lightly. And it's something that like, I genuinely don't have the words for it. That's kind of funny. For putting it out there and showing, Connecticut, showing New England, showing the world that Asnuntuck is phenomenal, and trying to erase some of that community college stigma that I experience in my community that I've seen pretty much everywhere. I know we all have. It's very important.
So would you say, well, let's backtrack on this. I did want to talk about, I talked with Veronique the other day, and she spoke a lot about having multiple states in one region, and our perspective, Kansas and Nebraska are one region. That's a huge geographic area, but the colleges aren't that geographically dispersed as much, so you don't really think of it that way. But it's always fascinating to me when you see a region that's got, in your case, 6 states, correct?
I
6 states.
So. Yes.
I mean, obviously, it's your perspective. It's what is to you. It is your experience. But what do you think makes it unique, having so many different states covered in one region like that, where everyone is collaborating from all those different backgrounds?
That's a really good question. I'm going to just preface my answer to that with the fact that New England is tiny. Like, we're 6 states that make up about maybe a quarter the size of Texas altogether. So I can't say too much about like that being so different. There was one series of like one weekend that I drove up to New Hampshire, which was about a 2.5-hour drive for one induction, and then drove 3 hours back down to go to Southern Connecticut, Norwalk Community College, which was another induction. And I just did that in 2 days, and it was like, that's about as far north as I've had to go for it. Maine only has a couple chapters, but those are probably the most dispersed, but that's getting too into the nitty gritty. What I would say about that is it's really like you get more of an insight as to how different states run their community college systems. So just within our region, we have one state whose community college systems we're consolidating. That's my state, actually, Connecticut. We aren't all officially under one banner yet, but we're going to be at some point. But then we have Community College of Vermont. They are already fully consolidated. They are one college with multiple campuses. But then Massachusetts and Maine and like and Rhode Island's also consolidated, but there's just one chapter that's actually active there anyway. But like the other ones just have their different, you know, colleges that all have different, you know, there's different structures, different things going on. And it's interesting to kind of navigate those situations because people get so confused by the consolidation concept if they're not from like a state that has done something like that. So that's been one interesting feature about it. But other than that, I can't really say to, like, again, it's what I know. So something from a different, you know, a different region might completely blow my mind. But I'm trying to think about like what would be unique about that beyond just like, I mean, we still all quibble about where to do the actual regional conference that'd be most accessible for everyone, but that's about the furthest it gets in terms of that.
Katie, did you have anything before I delved into the campaign questions?
I just thought it was interesting. I was going to ask you, how do you guys figure out where to have your regional conference? If there's, you know, you guys have a pick of how many states, you know, you could have it at, you could host it at.
I honestly still haven't figured it out. It's one of those things that the regional officers don't have that much say in. I know this coming year, this fall, the plan is to do it at CCRI, Community College of Rhode Island, because we've done some more that are like north, a little bit more north than usual. So they kind of called dibs a little while ago and just kind of pushed that into effect. But yeah, and we see the attendance shift depending on where we get it too. So we'll see if this one ends up being less well attended by the Maine chapters, or maybe because we actually have a regional officer from Maine for the first time like in a while, maybe that'll kind of inspire them to be a bit more active and come down anyway. So we'll have to see on that one. But yeah, there is consideration of what's the most central point, but it doesn't always get pulled all the way through.
So now let's delve into your campaign and the origins of it. Sort of when and what was there a specific incident that spurred you and instigated your interest in international office? And where did you kind of get inspired to start that massive project?
There were two specific moments that I think kind of set me on this path. The first one being actually at a regional conference. One of my very close friends at the time, who later ended up being my boyfriend and later campaign manager, so interesting relationship spread there. He was driving me and another regional officer home from a regional conference. This was, I think, fall 2018. And, you know, we were just talking and he just mentioned to me, because like, you know, we'd gotten to see a video, I think, where the international officers were talking. I don't think we actually had one with us that time. But he just mentioned to me like, hey, you know, have you ever thought about doing that? And I was like, what? Like, really? What, me? No, I haven't. And he was like, you should. He was like, you know, you really, like, I think you really embody like what Phi Theta Kappa means. Like, part of the reason I joined was because of like the way that you talk about it. He was like, I really think that you would do a great job at something like that. And I was like, okay, sure. And but it kind of started the ball rolling. Like, you know, what's stopping me? Like, why wouldn't I? Like, why couldn't I? And then that year, actually, a close friend of mine and at the time fellow regional officer, Jen Huntress, ran for Division I Vice President. She made it to finalist, and I served very hard on her campaign team. I was kind of a co-campaign manager with her actual campaign manager, Tisha Pittman. And, you know, she made it to finalist, and we were like sitting there. She was like, it was like Tisha was on the end, Jen was next to her, and then I was next to Jen. So we had like a little Jen sandwich going on. Like we were like I had like my arm around Jen and like holding Tisha's shoulder, and she had her arm around, and like we were both holding Jen's hand, and like all three of us were like collectively holding hands. And like while we waited for the winners to be announced, and it was just that feeling of like, wow, like that was the second, like before anyone was actually announced, just that moment, I was like, I need to do this. Like, I want to do this. Like, you know, the whole time it was just like, you know, watching her talk to people and like, it just, you know, having that experience from the sidelines, I was just like, I want to do this. And like, again, I've been in the New England region for a while. I've been to two, now technically three, counting virtual catalysts now. And in Kansas City, my region did not feel like a region, I guess, for lack of a better term. We felt like a bunch of chapters that were just kind of there and had to sit together. Like it didn't feel like there wasn't that feeling of like connectivity between all of us. And that catalyst with having a candidate, we were like all in it together. Like we were roping people who I didn't even know like in to try and help with it. And there was just this feeling like all of us were cheering, all of us were so excited. And just that feeling of like, you know, being together and being a part of something bigger. And one thing was, you know, wanting to continue that forward for the next year. I really wanted to, and I'm kind of sad that it didn't get to, you know, be that in terms of like having virtual Catalyst. We did the best we could, but there were, you know, some bumps along the road. But I think that, you know, the region still came together in a very wonderful way. But going back to what I was saying, that those were the main moments of, I do want to do this, and I think it's something I can do, and I'm going to try.
Well, that's pretty unique. That's the first such account that I've encountered out of all of this, where someone got the inspiration to do it by virtue of being there every step of the way for somebody else in the past. And that's an inspiring story. And so the turning point for you was the team huddle that you had with your candidate. That's pretty special. So getting to when you had the revelation of this is something that I want to do, when you got to the actual tactic and the strategy of what you really wanted to make your candidacy about, what were your main emphases as a candidate, and what did you think are the most important priorities for PTK in the immediate term?
So when I first, you know, kind of sat down and thought about like, okay, as a candidate, like what change do I want to make in PTK? What do I want to bring to PTK? Like, what do I have that would make me competitive? But then also, what do I actually want to do with it? The main things that came to mind were disability advocacy, financial accessibility, and actually engaging with alumni. Those were my three biggest things for that. So disability advocacy, I am very passionate about disability advocacy. How many times can I say disability advocacy in one interview? But that's beside the point. It's, you know, as somebody who struggled with a disability throughout high school, continues to struggle with some certain problems that come from it, having accessibility in our events is something that I feel should be a priority. And I feel like it's not something that's always considered. So that was kind of one of my main feats of like, how can we, as, you know, as an organization, how can we on the chapter level, regional level, international level, push to make things more accessible to all of our constituents? You know, seeing like the lack of subtitles on virtual Catalyst got to me at a very like deep level, and it turns out it's just that nobody asked for them. And I'm wondering, like, are there people who would have asked for them if they thought that wasn't a given, you know? So that's kind of one of those, being more proactive. And how can we educate chapters to be more accessible in their functions, to make their information more accessible, to make their meetings more accessible for students who, you know, may have to engage with it differently than the average person. That getting kind of that information out there is a big deal for me, because like there's so many little tweaks that people can make to make things more accessible for others, just things that they wouldn't think of to do but aren't actually that hard to make happen, and just keeping that awareness level up, bringing more of a voice to, you know, the PTK members who might not have even considered going to Catalyst because, you know, they heard from an advisor, okay, it's really loud, like that's not my scene, you know, like having, what can we do to accommodate that kind of situation? So those are like, that was one of the big things that I just wanted to get the discussion rolling, I guess would be, for lack of a better term, you know, have that as a priority of just like, can we just look at this for a second, just kind of like poke at it and see if there's anything we can be doing better. That's something that I'm very passionate about. The second part is the financial accessibility, which I know is one of Phi Theta Kappa's main goals right now, is actually, you know, how can, you know, students afford to join Phi Theta Kappa and be a part of it when, you know, there's a staff member at my college who, she's an alumna of my college as well, had a 4.0 GPA when she went there and never joined Phi Theta Kappa because it was, what I think at the time, $75, and that was grocery money, you know, that was food for her kids. And she couldn't justify that for herself. And that's when, you know, my chapter had the idea, well, actually, no, it was, it was actually a retired professor who used to be an advisor for PTK like 20 years ago. But it was mostly his idea, but we helped him with it, helped him get it through with our with our foundation, our college foundation. We had a $10,000 grant basically through our foundation to cover the costs for incoming members who filled out an application, showed demonstrated financial need, that kind of stuff. And, you know, so it was going to be, we initially asked for $2,000, but we ended up getting, I think it was, sorry, numbers escape me. It was like 2,700 or 3,700 for each consecutive year, and then 2,000 that first year or semester, and then there we go. That's how it worked. And you know, right now, of course, with this situation, we're hoping that that stays, but we haven't had that many applications to begin with, and we're working on trying to navigate the whole COVID situation and keeping Phi Theta Kappa alive in my chapter and in my college. But the point is that we found that solution for our specific chapter. We found that solution which helped, you know, students with financial need, and also actually second chance Pell Grant recipients. So students who are currently incarcerated and are taking classes at our college as well. A lot of them, I think there were, I want to say 16, I could be getting the numbers wrong, but that first semester that went specifically to second chance Pell recipients. So that's huge. And it's kind of one of my goals, and one of the things where I honestly didn't even think about it when I started running, but then like about halfway through, I was like, wait a second, I can be using this platform to tell different chapters about what we did, so that maybe they can be inspired to do something similar or start working to use similar fundraising tactics. So that was kind of an accident, a happy accident halfway through my campaign. I was like, if I talk about this a lot, one, it's kind of good that, you know, I helped with this project, but two, like it's telling chapters you can do this. Maybe not every chapter. You know, everybody has a different relationship with their college and has different situations, but you know, you can try, and who knows, maybe it'll work to some extent. So that's one of the big things I also wanted to get kind of rolling in terms of Phi Theta Kappa, and like, you know, expanding that kind of understanding. Though of course, you know, they're leagues ahead of me on that. We read some information about like what they've been kind of working on, and they are very aware that that's an option. So but it's good that like some of my goals actually aligned with PTK as a whole. And then the other end, I know I've been babbling for a while, but the alumni aspect of it. I have a lot of friends who are alumni. As somebody who will eventually be an alumna, you know, I want to make sure that there's a good platform. You know, there's something for me to do like when I'm done with this. I don't want to, you know, again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, PTK isn't getting rid of me for a while. So that kind of like, you know, what avenues are there for alumni to engage with Phi Theta Kappa as a whole, and kind of, again, poking at that a little bit and just seeing, you know, what we can open up. Those were my main goals when I kind of narrowed them down into running.
So typically I delve into that, to the alumni issue with people at the end, but because you had it as a focus of your candidacy, let's delve into that a little bit more, because it is refreshing to see the emphasis that a lot of candidates had on the alumni engagement from our alumni-centric perspective. And I don't want to say that I kind of think of ourselves as the nags sitting off to the side, pulling on people's shoulders saying, hey, remember us, remember us. It's not quite that extent, but it's funny as an analogy to think about that. But what people need to be aware of is the increasing, and we hope continually increasing, endowment of opportunities for people at the bachelor's degree level from Phi Theta Kappa, and even at the master's degree level. I was the beneficiary of that when I had my master's degree. You know, 2 people got the Geico Pathway to Complete Master's Degree Scholarship. I'd like to see in 10 years, I'd like to see 20 people get that, and 20 people who are pursuing a graduate degree. Because the reason Phi Theta Kappa really should care about the graduate degree, and this is me giving a speech here, so bear with me, is because the master's degree is, in many cases, the qualification that people need to teach at the community college. And to me, there's no better way for an alum to support Phi Theta Kappa and the community college system than if they're willing to, for their professional purposes, to get a graduate degree than to enable the learning of other people by supporting their college in that way as an adjunct faculty, or even as a full-time faculty, even eventually getting a PhD in the future. You never know. And so that's what I did from when I taught at my college, and I intend to do that as an adjunct for the rest of my professional career. But promoting that endowment for people post-transfer is something that we as alumni really want to promote. And we see the number one way that people do that is through all of the forms of the alumni associations, yes, but especially through what we are, which is the university-based alumni chapter, which is the hardest such organization to maintain. If you've seen a lot of the billing that we've done, we try to have a lot of information out about us because we know that it can be confusing as to the organization type and what exactly we're about. But what I want to see is high-profile members utilizing their reputations and their credentials and putting that toward the alumni objectives that you've mentioned and some of the stuff that I've mentioned here, where people can start making a huge impact toward increasing that endowment, increasing scholarship opportunities for alumni at the four-year university, and also as an after effect, increasing the esteem of the four-year universities for Phi Theta Kappa members as they come in. When the four-year university sees these people have done this at our institution and for our institution, and are prospective donors to our institution when they enter their professional lives, what is that going to mean to us as a university in the future? Let's increase our scholarship. Let's make sure that we get these transfer students to come here. And we are very proud of what we've done on our campus in terms of increasing that awareness. Washburn was very good to us at the outset, but what we've done is given Washburn some international recognition so that other institutions, we hope, will frankly become jealous and increase that awareness on their own campuses as well. Because if we foster that spirit of competition, there's nothing better that we can do. So that my point in making that speech was that I do want to stress to all of the candidates that I have a chance to talk with, and especially the ones who have gotten into international office like yourself, is that don't undervalue the path that we've taken at the four-year university, because it will go an incredibly long way toward promoting and supporting the current membership and promoting membership to prospective members so that they can see people who have actually gotten to where they're looking at, which is the bachelor's degree. They're looking all the way ahead to the bachelor's degree. And if they see people who have been aided on their path to that bachelor's degree by virtue of their membership, and people continuing to make the most of that membership after the transfer process, that's what, and frankly, for a lot of our members, most of the members in our chapter were not regional officers like Katty. I was on my all-state academic team almost by default because no one had ever been nominated from my chapter before. It's a tiny chapter. A lot of our members are people that join, get the scholarship, and then say, holy cow, look at what this means. And that's where most of our people have gotten involved. And it's a beautiful thing. But that's the story that we want to try to promote as well. And so for you having the alumni in your platform like that, I need to very sincerely thank you for that. And the candidates as a whole did a great job of keeping that. And I have to say, I've paid more attention to the candidates this year than I ever have, partially because Catalyst went online. And so I did more due diligence and research on that. So I really, really appreciate that. And I really hope that you are successful with that. And you'll be getting some infomercials from me about, depending on what you do for your bachelor's degree, might be out there for you, because you would probably, and every international officer candidate would go a lot farther faster than someone like me from when I got PTK started here at Washburn, if they wanted to go that route. And so there's my paid programming for the day, but I do want to thank you for that.
Thank you for the information, honestly. Like, it's very, not to interrupt what you're about to say, but
yeah,
it's very, I like the strategic elements of it as well, I think are very helpful, because that's not, like, again, my kind of, a lot of where I was coming from with the alumni aspect was very selfish in terms of, I want to be able to stay connected and keep moving that forward. And like how, we have this amazing, millions of Phi Theta Kappans that we're just kind of letting go of. And it's like this amazing base of just human willpower, that we could be utilizing for different projects, for different, supporting, community college students now. Like one of my big things, again, not to get into it too deeply, but was connecting alum, who are established a little bit more, who are in the college level, who could then help, bring recent graduates of community colleges or even recent, inductees up to that level, and help them in their goals and help connecting them in career goals and that kind of stuff. But I hadn't even touched on in my brain the thought of yeah, you're right, the master's, getting adjuncts, who are Phi Theta Kappa alumni. That's exceptional, and I will be carrying that one forward. It's one way or another, whatever power I do end up having, I'm gonna at least bring that statement forward.
I think
So,
it's
go
I
ahead,
think it's
Katie.
really interesting. Yeah, no, no. I think it's really interesting because I mentioned this interview. I've been around for a little bit. I think I got my associate's degree back in 2011.
Mhm.
So I've been, in school for a little bit. I had to take a couple of breaks, but almost at the finish line. And so it's interesting because when when I made that switch from the community college to the university,
Mhm.
I mean, I literally went from, being engaged to being completely lost, not knowing what to do. I'm like, I know that I have all these skills. I know I've learned all these things, through Phi Theta Kappa, but I don't know how to implement them. I don't know anybody else who has been in Phi Theta Kappa that I could maybe connect with. And so it's one of those things where it's like, to me, it's interesting that now it's like more and more, of our members are saying, and this whole, alumni campaign that PTK started a little bit ago. It's like, it's really interesting that now it's like we are trying to make that move forward. How do we
I think we lost audio with Katie for a second there. I think she may have to reload and get back in. So as we wait for that, we'll let Katie finish what she was saying, but in the immediate term, I just also wanted to chime in and just sort of elaborate on where she was headed, which was we have a lot of goals for alumni at the university level to earn the recognitions that Phi Theta Kappa just has done in the last 2 years, for instance, with the star ratings for alumni chapters. It's been very beneficial, and I think under Dr. Tinscher Ladner, she's done a great job of enhancing that profile. I think that's a big part of what she's done. I think because, if I'm not mistaken, she is an alum herself, and so there's that aspect of it. The folks down at the office there are all in on it. There is absolutely no doubt they're all in on it. I've had a lot of communication with them. They have always helped us. When we earned our charter as an alumni chapter, they were there for us with every conceivable answer to every conceivable question I threw at them. So I think that when you have people who are of prominence within Phi Theta Kappa as members, which we didn't have going for us very much at the beginning when we got our chapter up and running, it will resonate more with the people at the four-year university, and it'll make a big difference, I think. And so I talked with someone yesterday who, you see my interview with Roxana, she was not a candidate, but she was a campaign manager, and she had her degree of involvement down at her college. She's really interested in doing this at her university because when she transfers, they actually have an alumni chapter already started. And so that's the type of involvement that we're hoping to try to promote through our advocacy and through the interactions that we've been fortunate enough to have with all of the candidates this year. So while I wait for Katie to get back on, and I am watching the list to make sure that I can see her name when it pops back up, just go through what was a typical day like campaigning for you. Everyone runs their campaign a little bit differently, and so it's of interest to us while you got your campaign started. Obviously, we had the impediment or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, of the digital conversion. What was a typical day like for you, and about how long did you spend campaigning?
That's kind of embarrassing to answer. Most of the day was dedicated to it in one way or another, unfortunately. To some of the, like, I think one of the big drawbacks, I think for each of us candidates in different ways, was the problem with social media is that it's always there. And you can't really schedule time to be like it. You had to schedule time to be off of it, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And it was very tempting sometimes to just be looking and commenting and liking and posting just constantly. Typical day, I tried to keep it to 2 or 3 posts at the start. Every day I'd have something out there, be it even if it's just something as simple as like, hey, check out my website once I got that going. I was always kind of trying to plan. I did a lot of Facebook Lives. Usually it was just like an hour long, just kind of chatting with, whoever happened to pop in to talk with me. I was very lucky to have a fairly active campaign team. So there were people who were in, would ask me a bunch of questions. And that was probably the most fun that I had throughout the course of it, was the Facebook Live element, and getting to actually, the closest to the person-to-person engagement that, you can really get in this digital climate. But other than that, it was, I'd wake up and I would try to get a post in. I had most of my content pre-planned. Usually it would just take like a couple minutes for me to put it actually together, write it up, have it there. And then I'd go in and comment, see what other people were doing. Obviously, as part of the chapter, I was also trying to, gauge the other candidates to try and help with that sort of discussion. And also they were, becoming my friends, as we kind of went through it. So going in and supporting people throughout the rest of it. And then I'd try and schedule some time, away from social media for a little while, come back in a couple hours, make another little post, that kind of stuff. I'd have, typical day was, I spent a lot of time on Facebook. That's kind of what it kind of comes down to, unfortunately. I spent a lot of time on Facebook and just prepping and planning, practicing caucus questions before the caucus was filmed, practicing my speech before the speech was filmed, just kind of all of that kind of stuff. Talking with my campaign team, oh my gosh, did I do okay on that live? Did that sound right? Did it look stupid? Is this post okay? But I don't know. It definitely varied from day to day. I will say that, especially as I got more comfortable and more in the rhythm of it, I ended up spending less time focusing just on that and more time in making better posts and getting more information together. And then once I had my website up, it was mostly just promoting that. So it kind of varied from day to day.
And just as an update, Katie messaged me that she thinks that in her neighborhood, the internet speed is slow. It may be partially because this is a Sunday, so she's going to try to get back on. But if not, we'll still make this work. So bear with us, and apologies for that. So something I forgot to ask when we talked with Mariah yesterday, because hers was an abbreviated opportunity because she had another meeting come up. Mm-hmm. When you're obviously, it's not like when you had your huddle with your candidate when you were a staff member for your candidate, where you were all there personally. And here comes Katie back on. I'm going to let her back on. But so what was going through your mind as you were sitting there on your computer waiting for your results to come in, and then when you actually found out that you had been elected? Sort of what was your first reaction? What was going through your mind?
Okay. So just a little bit of context for this one. We had to sign an NDA for about the results, because we found out hours before everybody else did, and we were not allowed to tell anybody. So Catalyst was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was at 8 o'clock, I think was the last session in terms of Eastern Standard Time. I found out at 6 o'clock. So it ended, the voting period ended, and then 15 minutes later I had to jump on a call to they kind of put me in this very private, it was just me and one of the people from TK Productions, and she was like, okay, I'm the only one who is with you for this, and it's I'm sorry that I'm the only person that you can kind of react to, but I'm gonna tell you the name of the person who won, and you're gonna just kind of react to that with me. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then she said my name, and you can all see the reaction with that was kind of posted, featuring me completely ugly crying and losing it, because I was like, what? I don't know. I was like, I couldn't completely wrap my mind around it. I wasn't sure if they were doing a bait and switch of okay, now we're gonna do it again, but you lost. And I'm like, but they didn't do that. I thought they were going to for a minute, but they didn't end up doing that. Actually, Elena, because she was with her parents, she told me later that her parents were like, so wait, what was that? Did you win? And she was like, oh, they had me film both. And she just completely lied to them about that. And it was just a great excuse, but I didn't even think to do that. But because I was video chatting with my boyfriend and campaign manager at the time, and I when I got the text, and I was like, oh, I gotta go, that we're having a meeting to discuss things, I guess. And then when I went back, I was just like no, they're just giving us some details about how to do the thing, and completely just no, we just don't know. And then when we watched the actual Catalyst, the New England region did a big Zoom party, so it was a whole bunch of us just watching it, and so they were just like, oh, how are you feeling, Victoria? And I was like, I'm good. nervous. Like I had to like mask it all. Like I wasn't allowed to react. I had to pretend that I didn't know. And like I kind of like locked up and like threw away the key for a while and was just like, yeah, I don't know. Like we'll have to find out. Who knows? It could go either way. Which was ridiculous. So then when it actually was announced, I was just like, I still didn't have time to, like, I couldn't actually react then either because I'd already kind of flatlined a little bit in terms of it, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I was just like, I just want to see who else won. And then afterwards, I finally was like, oh my God. I don't think there was any specific thought that went through my head other than thank God. Like everything that I put into this, like, oh my gosh, like, and like a couple days later, it kind of sunk in a little bit more when we were actually started to do more meetings and like the 5 of us started to, talk a lot more and like, set our goals and like, which is something we're working on right now. And like, that's kind of when it started more sinking in like, wow, this is huge. This is going to be huge. This opportunity is nothing that I've ever had the chance to do anything like before. And, it's still sinking in a little bit here and there. I think it's because like, I've just been in my house. Like I haven't, there hasn't been much of a, like, I've gotten a lot of very celebratory, congratulatory text messages. My Facebook feed has exploded in terms of friend requests, but, it still hasn't fully sunken in yet, if I'm being dead honest with you.
So that was a story for the ages that you just told. I'll be repeating that story a lot in conversation with people. That is, and now I got to make sure when I talk to the other officers that I revisit their experience with that process because I know Phi Theta Kappa has the ability to pull stuff out of their sleeves like that, and that one. They managed to give you guys something that you'll be talking about for a long time, and I highly doubt any other candidates will ever have the chance to go through that again. So you guys are a unique group, and you are obviously very skilled at you could probably play cards and mask your emotions well that way if that's what you wanted to do. So thank you for sharing that narrative. That was very special. Katie, you dropped out with audio in the middle of the one observation you were making, and I kind of delved back into the campaign thing. First of all, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I had to sign in through my phone. For whatever reason, my laptop is not picking up any internet connection now. So then I just have to give it a try with whatever's next.
Well, it looks perfect. It looks perfectly fine. So thank you for accommodating it and doing it audible like this. I appreciate it very much. You just were interrupted in the middle of your alumni thought that you were expressing there. So I don't know if
Yeah. I was just just really commenting on the fact that now it seems that there really is more of like an interest, or maybe the interest has always been there, but there hasn't been that movement, that voicing of, we want to continue this. We want to keep doing what we're doing with PTK.
Yeah.
And it means a lot because it's something that we feel as alumni that we have a chance to be on the cutting edge of. So you then as the officer candidates and the officers now, I think are having a chance to be at the forefront while this I don't want to say transformation, but while this enhancement is taking place society-wide. And it's a beautiful thing to watch in terms of every day you'll see Phi Theta Kappa make an announcement of someone else creating a scholarship, a new university creating a specific Phi Theta Kappa scholarship. And we believe it's the job of the alumni to be promoting that. And we think it's starting to work in many ways. So.
Yeah, and I think too, with that, not only is the name of our organization getting bigger, but it, now what we're doing is making a difference.
Absolutely.
And it's pretty valuable to, I think, you mentioned Victoria, and I think it was right before Katie dropped off, so I forgot to make an observation about that. But one thing that I did, and I would have done on a personal level, even if it wasn't for our alumni chapter, is I've gone back to my community college and I've actually helped members of their chapter fill out the all-state academic team application, because I don't know how it works where you are, but in the state of Kansas, there's a lot of different flaming hoops you have to jump through in order to make that happen, from getting the proper letters of recommendation to getting a login. When I was nominated, we went forever without being able to find a login, and it was for my advisor. It was a big journey. Now it's easy as pie by comparison, but I've tried to do what I can to share the information with them. You know, they volunteer at the same organizations that I did at my chapter when I was at the chapter, and so they tell me, you know, what's the best way that I can make a convincing argument about the mission of that organization that we're working with, and I have a little bit more perspective because I've been familiar with that organization longer. Those sort of tasks, helping people apply for scholarships, helping people apply for recognition while they're members, is something that, you know, you don't need an official alumni apparatus to do it. But what we feel we've done is that we've given our alumni members an opportunity and a platform and an awareness of the need to support the current members that way. And so that's probably the favorite task that I've done since I've been involved as an alum, is helping people that have come after me do the scholarships that I did, and they've since gotten scholarships that I didn't get, couldn't get, or what have you. My chapter, a tiny regional chapter that has about 400 students at the campus, just got its first regional officer for Kansas Nebraska region. And that's about the first time, one of my instructors told me, it's about the first time someone's outdone something that you did at that campus. And I said, well, yeah, of course, because they have all of us back there, you know, helping them, lifting them up on our shoulders, trying to make sure that they get someplace that we weren't permitted to by circumstances, that we're laying the foundation for the next group. And that person is undoubtedly going to leave some stepping stone ready for the next person after them to do something and reach a height that they hadn't gotten to before. So, you know, it's very valuable and very rewarding to see what has come of this, just since the time of my membership, which is you know, I've been involved with Phi Theta Kappa since I was a member 7 years ago. So I've gotten several degrees and I've been around too long. Like Katie says, we've both kind of been around too long. So it's very, very, very rewarding to see the awareness from headquarters and to see the instinct of people like yourself. You didn't need people to recruit you on the idea. You could see it because you were very perceptive.
Yeah. And I really do think that that's how it should be. And I think that it's really, you know, maybe this is us because we've seen it at the beginning, and now we see it, you know, a few years later. I think this is kind of how we see, you know, those building blocks and the things that, you know, our organization is doing. You know, we start at the very bottom and maybe we didn't get it, we didn't know how to do it, but now what we learned, we can, you know, in turn take it and help build somebody else up to do it, to reach for it, you know, to help them out, to get those scholarships, to get, you know, whatever opportunity that they're looking for that maybe we just didn't, you know about, or we didn't get the help that we needed to get it done. And I think that's really cool. And I think that that's like an amazing way of how like Phi Theta Kappa works, is that it doesn't matter where you are, you're still there, you're still a part of it, and you're still helping out everybody else, you know, in the organization.
Definitely.
And so we do very much appreciate the awareness that you've demonstrated in this way, and the general awareness that headquarters has. It's starting to pay off. So
I'm excited, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for you and for your team.
Thank you.
And so to sort of channel it into, obviously with the circumstance of the continuing closures right now, it's a little bit hard for you to answer. But generally speaking, if we operate on the assumption that campuses will be approximately normal in the coming year, what will your responsibilities be with your officer position?
Right. So right now, I mean, speaking in terms of like what we've kind of gone through so far, the responsibilities are connecting, you know, with Phi Theta Kappa constituents. We're working on setting our goals overall right now. So like what we're going to be really working toward and what we're going to try to complete over the course of this next year. the main responsibilities would be, of course, you know, working towards whatever goals we end up setting, and then actually speaking at, you know, regional conferences, attending and speaking at regional conferences, uplifting. One of the big things they've already been pushing is kind of what you were saying before, Katie, about you know, encouraging people to run for international office and regional officer positions, because Catalyst is so often that big jumping point, and because we didn't get that physical catalyst, we didn't get that moment, that aha moment that so many of us had. You know, how can we as international officers continue inspiring students and continue inspiring people to, you know, come in and fill our shoes next year? So yeah, we're still, I'm going to be honest, we're still working on orientation stuff. Like, we're still learning about the full scope of the responsibilities, but that seems to be the basis of course, the big one that I forgot in the previous listing that I just gave is, of course, representing Phi Theta Kappa on that level, which, you know, is essential for every step of the way, essential to every bit of the process. You know, representing Phi Theta Kappa, being the face of Phi Theta Kappa for the next year, and, you know, representing our colleges, representing community colleges as a whole, and what, you know, what the community college student is capable of, and why we shouldn't be discounted. Those are kind of, I think, the responsibilities as far as I understand them so far.
So now to sort of take it from the experience sharing to now the perspective angle, to look at what's coming up. I guess the proper way to word this would be, I'm going to ask you about your immediate plans, but because of some references you get, I'm not going to ask you about that while we're rolling. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, give you a couple pointers that I would have to share on a personal level. But I think what I would ask that sort of just escaped me now. Oh, so from a, you already mentioned about the experience of the candidate that you worked with for your region and how that sort of was an inspiration for you. So we probably don't have to cover that, but I think what I would try to word it as a qualitative thing that I try to get a feel for where everyone's coming from with this is that when you are finished with your higher education career, when you are finished with your degree and you're out there in pursuing your professional goals, if you could select one character trait that you would want the people from your chapter and from your college to think and say that you demonstrated in helping and supporting them when you're gone, what would that be?
That's a great question. The first one that comes to mind is integrity. Just, you know, I mentioned it actually. I think did I end up mentioning it? It's funny, like I can't even fully remember the caucus that we did. Yeah, no, it was the fifth hallmark. That was it. Okay, it did come up in the caucus. I practiced so many questions, so it all kind of blurs together at this point. But Dr. Lynn Ladner obviously asked each of us, you know, what if we could select a fifth hallmark for Phi Theta Kappa, what would it be? And even then, my answer was integrity. You know, that, you know, pulling it through, you know, finishing what you start kind of aspect. I haven't always been the best at that in terms of personal projects, but in terms of what I do with Phi Theta Kappa, what I do within my personal, you know, friendships, personal relationships, and what I hope to do, you know, as an international officer and in helping my chapter continue forward. We were the 4th finalist for Most Distinguished Chapter this year, which is phenomenal considering we had 4 people working on those projects, like by the end of it. College project, we had a few more people, but through Honors in Action, it was like we threw that together in a couple months, but it was through our integrity, through our dedication, through our hard work that we were able to actually get that done. And like, I mean, me and my boyfriend went on a vacation the week that it was due thinking, oh, we'd be done, right? We had this whole thing planned. No, we ended up spending a couple hours literally like in a hotel room, finishing the editing and finishing writing it up. So I'm very happy that it all paid off and we got like recognized that those hours that were stolen from our getaway ended up, you know, being worth it. But the point is like following through, not leaving things hanging. I think that's one thing that I definitely want to carry with me forward through everything that I do in my life.
And then as a sort of a follow-up to that, first of all, do you know Carol Comer by chance?
I have had the very good opportunity to meet her once or twice, but not very well, unfortunately.
Well, it's when she came to visit us, because she lives in the Kansas City area, so she's right by where we are. She came to visit us last fall, and she had been walking around telling everyone about what the 5th hallmark is. And so finally we asked her, what is the 5th hallmark? And she said food.
I
And
love
because of all of the food, the different food that people get a chance to try, and all the different, people making goodies and stuff to bring to induction ceremonies and conventions and that sort of stuff. She said that's the fifth hallmark as it is. So I think you may have to change yours to the sixth hallmark if
Yeah,
she
that's
gets her
true.
way, because I think she may be ahead of you chronologically and trying to lobby for that.
Yeah, no, I won't argue with it.
Um,
Take
and,
my
and,
role.
and and Katie was there for that, and Katie had just joined us at that time. I think that then this is a little bit bouncing around in terms of the order and the subject matter, so forgive me for that. But in terms of, I think you still are in the process of plotting what your immediate future holds. But in general, what sort of ideas, if there's multiple ideas and possibilities you're considering, what do you have in mind for what you want to do for your career, if you've narrowed it down to any extent, because you got a lot on your plate at the moment?
Yeah, I'll admit I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to end goals, unfortunately. I've some things that I've been toying with, some things that I keep going back and forth on, or actually, again, one of the reasons why what you said about the the master's degree being so important for adjunct professors and professors on the community college level is actually one of the reasons that hit me so much, is because that's one of my thoughts of, like, if I continue doing communications, maybe get my bachelor's, get my master's, then maybe teaching at the community college level and working on independent projects on the side. One of my biggest holdbacks and like the biggest things that are kind of keeping me from like just jumping right in is that, what I'd love to do as a career is, being like a media producer, content creator of some sort, be it like video, be it writing. I mean, no matter what I do, I'm always going to be a writer, but I do actually have to finish a project to maybe hopefully find a career in that. But writing, content creation, media production, that is where like my kind of passion, where my love is in terms of like what I want to do. But it's just kind of figuring out how to do a career in that is kind of terrifying, to be completely honest. So that's one thing like I definitely hope to further develop throughout the rest of my academic career, because the other end of it is that academia is something that I do really enjoy. Research is something that I really enjoy. And it's like, there's all these little pieces, all these little skills that I've have, all these different little passions. They're separate, but like they do interconnect in different interesting ways. It's just like, how can I somehow make a way, like find a way to make that in any way lucrative? Like, how can I subsist and do everything that I want to do as well? That's where it's kind of like what degree will set me on a path that will set me up for success in any of these, spheres, and preferably more than one of these spheres at the same time. But I'm still trying to explore that and like toy around with that, figure out what that looks like. But actually the community college professor thing is something I have thought about for a while. And even as a bouncing off point, I say in terms of like, yeah, let me just get my master's real quick for a bouncing off point for my backup plan. But no, it is something that like I mean, as you've probably guessed from the past hour that we've been talking, I'm very passionate about PTK. I'm very passionate about community college and helping this particular demographic, this particular group of people, the people who go to community colleges who often need some extra help. There's the retired professor who kind of helped us with the grant situation was talking to me once. I did an independent study with him on leadership once, that kind of bounced a whole lot of my leadership path off. But he was talking to me once about the job of a community college professor and how it's not just teaching your subject, it's teaching life too. Because like, I think he said like 70% of students will be okay. Like they're going to be fine. They're going to graduate from community college, go on, do whatever else they want. The remaining 30% need some help. They need, some guidance. They need somebody to look up to. They need someone to show them what the opportunities are, what pathways there are. And that's something that like it's when I talk about it, it's like, oh, of course this is what I'm going to do. But then when I think about it, it goes back into that whole big wave of like, there's 10 million other options. But when I talk about it, that's what I think I ultimately will most likely end up doing. I'll be surprised if I don't.
And as a augmentation to that thought, this is something that's for you to think about from my own experience. When I taught at Highland, I was teaching an intro to financial accounting course, so it was very basic debits and credit concepts. And I was getting a master's degree at the time, so this is like baby steps for me. It's like building blocks. But what was nice is that you're not trying to sell people a degree or sell people a profession. You're trying to sell people the basic core competencies that they need to know for after taking the class. If you keep that perspective, it really becomes a joy, and it's also helpful because oftentimes from that end, when you're pursuing your career, you're going to be dealing with people who likewise don't have a familiarity with the big, or sorry, the minute things that you've specialized in for your degree. But you have the ability to make things and make complex things understandable and make the theory of why we do this and why we do that in the business world understandable to them, and empower them with that theory and that understanding. And what I had a lot of in that class is that before class or after class, we had great idle conversations before and after class, mostly because this one kid in my class, his father's business was a construction company, and he was asking me about, so when they do this, why do they do it this way? And we actually got to a detailed, like 30-minute conversation about the completed contract method in construction accounting, because he was trying to understand his father's business better. And I thought, that's probably one of the most valuable things I've ever had a chance to be able to do for somebody outside of the class itself. And that may be more important. And I don't know what happened to the kid, if he decided to major in accounting or what, because he liked the class a lot. He was just out of high school. And when you're being a support role like that of helping people enhance their knowledge, even outside of the bare competencies of the course, it comes into such use for them in ways that you or they might not even be able to understand. So if you're a source of good like that for somebody as a student, it is tremendously rewarding, and it is something that you can take a lot of pride in, even if you don't know the specifics of what they're doing. So that's me giving another advertisement in that way. But Katie, did you have anything before I kind of delve back into a regional thing? Because there's one regional question I wanted to ask, and I keep forgetting to ask our candidates about stuff with their region.
You know what? I'm just curious about you. Like, you have all these things that you're interested in, and as you guys were campaigning and doing your thing, I mean, those all sound like skills that you have that definitely helped you move forward or implement what you wanted to in your campaign. But do you have any specific or any sort of learning experiences throughout this whole thing that you can share with us about running for officer or working on your campaign throughout the time?
Yeah, a couple major things. I think that there's some things that retrospectively I've realized along the way that would have made my life a little bit easier when I got down into the nitty-gritty of it. But one of the main things, I guess, just outset, one of the main learning outcomes, I guess, from this was learning to sell yourself a bit. I've always struggled with being I guess acknowledging my own accomplishments, for lack of a better way of putting it there. It's always been oh my gosh, am I being too braggy? That kind of feeling of just not, borderline imposter syndrome, if not full on, that feeling of not being able to accept that what I've actually accomplished. And here I am on a public stage, essentially broadcasting, this is everything that I've done in my college career. Check it out. So, being able to do that without feeling bad, I guess, is the best way I can put that. Being able to I think it's an essential even job interview skill of being able to accept the hard work that you have put into things, the luck that's kind of gotten thrown in there, and the accomplishments that you've made without feeling like you're completely in you have a head the size of Mars. Those are kind of that's I guess one of the main things. Staying humble while acknowledging your own achievements was one thing that I really I had to kind of work I had to work at that. I'm decent at graphic design, and video editing and video talking, doing the Facebook lives is something that I had practiced with a little bit in my classes, but I'd never had the opportunity to really do an action. So that whole social media campaign was completely new experience for me, but it was something that I had already done the research on, and I had already taken classes, that helped supplement. So that's one place that I was definitely ahead of the game in. But there's a lot of resources online for candidates who aren't as familiar with that. And that's one thing that we actually we had a Facebook group for all the candidates, and every now and then I'd just be plop, here's a link, here's some information, oh, here's how you make a Facebook frame. Like, it just, that kind of stuff, like we helped each other so much in that, which kind of brings me to one of the next big things, is that the nature of co-opetition, which is something that's really pushed. One of the reasons why I ran was that I wanted to see that, I wanted to feel that, competing against people but still being friends with them and still working together. Honestly, like, the Division I candidates helped each other so much. There was one time that, like, Leanna and I were helping Aaron specifically, like, get a Facebook frame together, and like we were giving him information. Like, it was always one of us too, which was hilarious. Like, I noticed that, who sent, he'd ask, hey, how do you guys do a Facebook Live? And one of us or both of us would end up sending him a link or two about how to do it. And it was like just that feeling of like, yes, you're my competition, but it's not going to be a fair competition if you don't know how to do this thing that's a big basis of my campaign, that's so essential for this sort of campaign situation. So that was a big thing that we kind of learned along the way, which was interesting. The other thing, and the thing that I'm going to say I never used, but I wish I had thought of at the start when I could have used it, was actually how Facebook itself works. Hopefully we won't have to do social media campaigning next year. Like, I sincerely hope that the officers of next year do not have to deal with that. If not, like, I'm going to make them like a quick, like a cheat guide or something, because like it was the things that I learned halfway through it. I was going to initially schedule my posts, but Facebook does not allow you to schedule posts on a personal page. This is very, very detailed, nitty gritty, unfortunately. So I'm sorry if this isn't actually helpful, but like, you have to make a separate Facebook page and put all your information in there if you want to use a scheduling app, so you can just get it all out of the way and not have to worry about it and wake up and like, make sure you're online at these specific times. There's all this stuff about like warming up the algorithm. Like, you have to be on for like an hour before you go live in order for the live to actually go up on people's feeds, and just all this weird information about like Facebook algorithm stuff. And I'm just like, okay, like stuff I wish I'd known like going in, but I figured out along the way. So
These are lifelong lessons in brand management.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And I was going to say, do you think that maybe these are, some additional skills that maybe future candidates should know about?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe they might not, like you said, they might not be, I guess, as unfortunate or fortunate as you guys to have to do things, switch from kind of doing a face-to-face to a virtual one, to virtual campaigning. But maybe that's one of the things that, maybe changes, or maybe is a part of, the next catalyst, how to work, social media to your advantage.
Yeah, and to touch on that for a second, like, again, as someone who's been to a couple catalysts, so my first one, like, I was never a voter delegate, but we helped a lot with our voter delegate a lot with like meeting people and getting to know and talking to different candidates. But I barely remember my first catalyst in terms of the candidates. Like, that was not a big part of it for me. Second catalyst, I cared a lot more about the candidates because I was on a campaign team, so I paid a lot more attention than I would have in the past. This catalyst, I honestly, I liked that they had our stuff out there so that people who weren't attending Catalyst could see that. Like, that, I think, was one of the biggest parts for me, because otherwise we weren't even going to get a copy of our speech. So like, we weren't going to get a recording of it. So it's like having that information out there also, so that like, I feel like it has a much longer lasting impact. Like, I don't know how long they're going to have that information up there, but like, if say they have it accessible and like 2 years from now I'm applying for a job, or I'm applying for like, to a school or something, and they search my name, it's going to be there, and all this stuff that I did is going to be there. And the same is true for all of the other candidates. And I'm like, that's so huge for us, just for our career opportunities moving forward. And it gives I think the next candidates more of something to look back to. Like, I spent ages trying to find a couple years ago's caucuses. I finally found them like hidden somewhere. Like, they did have them filmed and put up, and I finally found them. But like, it's like there's just not that much information about previous campaigns. Like, you can't learn from the past as well when it's not being recorded, the way that this one is all like public knowledge. Anybody go and see this. Anybody can go and learn from this. And for us, I think another aspect of it is that, yeah, you know, this was a, you know, trial by fire as far as brand management goes. And as far as like real political campaigns, if like we're not real political campaigns, you don't get to just stand there and have people come around and talk to you. Like you have to, you know, put yourself out there where they can find you, and you have to find ways to get your message out there and to reach people at their homes and where they are, because they're not going to go looking for you. And you know, the people who do go looking for you are treasured and very much appreciated, but you know, there's still a small portion compared to the vast majority of voters. And so learning about like that kind of stuff, I do hope, like, I mean, so the social media campaign period was going to be 2 weeks. Obviously it turned into 4 or 5-ish. I think it began March 18th and then obviously ended April, whatever. All the days are kind of blurring together, to be totally honest with you, 17th, 18th, that period. But so like even having that period, like last year was the first year that candidates were able to do like have that social media campaigning period. And then this year, obviously we turned the whole thing on its head. But I think there's a lot to be gained from that experience. And I'm very curious to see how next year's candidates deal with that sort of melding of what the campaign experience is. Because there's many individuals who may end up being candidates next year who only know the social media aspect. They don't know what the physical one would be like. So like they may go all in for social media and then not have as much at their actual booth. So it's or like they might not, like the split might be different. Like the next candidate situation might be completely different from anything we've ever seen before. So I'm personally very excited to see that and to see how PTK kind of carries that forward. But I really hope they consider doing something similar to what they did this year in terms of having our caucuses and speeches available for people to review after, because that was, I think that's important. Like that was a really important part of it for me anyway, and for my chapter, you know, going through and seeing everybody and then being able to check out their personal pages. Like it just kind of, I liked the way that part was structured, because it allowed, like you said earlier, more people to do their due diligence, you know, to kind of look more deeper into the situation.
Do you think in terms of like the resources, because I know that when you have, you know, when you're working on like the you know, the physical booths, you need to have all this information printed, you know, so that people can take away, you know, do you think it helps in terms of maybe cutting back on some of the cost, that accessibility of being able to run, having the funds to push your campaign forward when maybe you don't have that much funding or there's not as many resources available?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I meant to in my little babble just then, but that's it. So I was very fortunate. I had a $500 donation from my region because I was the only candidate. They were able to afford that. So, and we were like, based on, I had my budget like outlined, and I was going to have to pay probably like another $200 out of pocket for everything that I had planned. And then this happened, and now I'm giving the region $250 back because I did not even like close to hit that thing. So even then, some of what I ended up purchasing was stuff that I had purchased before it got moved online and just couldn't return. So like it makes it a million times more accessible, because you know it makes such a huge difference. And granted, to be fair on that, not every candidate who's won, you know, has been one that has put on a big, expensive, froofy, like, you know, had campaign t-shirts, you had like everything, like, you know, put a lot of financial, you know, effort into it. Not every candidate who has done that has won. Not every candidate who has won has done that, you know, that kind of like, there's been candidates who had a bare booth who've won in the past. But I do 100% agree that like being able to do it online was 10,000 times more accessible for getting our information out there, financially accessible. Again, if I could have, aside from like theoretically, what I ended up using was the Adobe Creative Cloud was one thing that I ended up putting on the bill because I did a lot of work with that. I may have had it anyway, but I still used it primarily for my campaign during that period. So I got away with that one. I got this background for $20, and I probably could have gotten away with just that if I hadn't already started getting some stuff. So like that's leagues different than, I think the quote for my distributable piece before I, you know, thank God we didn't order it beforehand, was around $250. So like it all depends on obviously printers and what you have accessible, but like having it free. Like you just put the PDF up there is leagues better, in my opinion. Both, I mean, for the environment for one, but secondly is like just the cost of it is, it's a huge barrier for many students. Granted, it also does encourage, like, and there's always that pro con of this. It encourages
Right,
students,
always.
yeah, to then, have to find different ways to get that money, to have different fundraisers, to talk to people about getting donations. If I didn't have to, if I wasn't expecting a real catalyst, I wouldn't have had, the conversations with my, regional advisory board to ask for that money. And it was I had to do like a presentation about what my plan was. And it was very interesting. Even as a regional officer, like they had to consider all of that. And it was still like, it was interesting. I don't know. So there's always a pro cons, but yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I think in many ways that you're a trailblazer for this process and whatever transformation this process will end up becoming. So I believe you deserve a great deal of applause in terms of how you adjusted on the fly, and certainly the ideas and plans that you've expressed that hopefully do get adopted and emulated in some way, shape, or form. Because I agree with you both 100% on all of what you just discussed in terms of how the process can be enhanced. I don't want to say improved, because the process, there's nothing that needs improved, but there's always enhancement. And there's a difference between those two terms for me. And so you do deserve a lot of commendation on that. I think the last question that I had was just basically an open-ended type question, and it was more tailored toward your campaign platform, since you enumerated alumni as part of your platform. Just what overall message would you have, or what would you like to say to alumni as a whole, or particularly alumni who are at the juncture in their careers where our members are, the people to whom I report, the people to who I represent, and Katie, obviously, who we represent. What would your message be to them, if you had one, in terms of, from your perspective, being a current member and one of the 5 highest profile members in Phi Theta Kappa for this year?
Couple things. Great question for one. One would be thank you for all that you've done, for the engaged alumni that, have, kept helping their chapters, who have kept in contact, kept those ties. Number one would be thank you. I'm not sure if you guys know, but I didn't get a chance to talk about this, which is wild. But the New England Region Alumni Association has been very near and dear to the New England region, obviously. And one of my closest friends was recently elected president. So, I have a lot of strong ties to the alumni in my area. And, thank you to those of you, again, like yourself and Katie, who have been pushing pushing the boundaries of what alumni are doing, and, pushing, the reach that you have. I guess the end towards people who are considering getting more engaged, who haven't, fully like decided, their life has come up and maybe they aren't sure if Phi Theta Kappa is still something that's important to them, or I'm not sure how to engage, but just to, I would encourage them to do so. It seems like from everything that I've talked to with you guys, that the benefits continue, and even if it's just like that feeling of warmth and being able to serve, and working to make sure that there's more recognition for alumni in general, which is something that I care deeply about. I think that message would be like, keep doing it, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Like, that's one of the biggest things I'd have to say.
And you have our unending gratitude for, as I said before, keeping alumni front and center. It matters a lot, and this momentum is going in one direction only. It's not going to be stopped, even if people conscientiously wanted to stop it. It's not stopping at this point. This is an enrichment of the experience, and it's a way to enhance the experience of the current members by keeping the alumni engaged. And so thank you for supporting that. I think then, for the rolling portion, I think we're pretty much done, unless Katie, did you have anything else? There's a couple things I want to share when we're done rolling, though.
Probably not, because then I'll go off on another tangent and then we'll be here for another like 30 minutes.
Well, that would be, if you saw my interview with Veronique on Friday, I felt like I wasn't an only child for a minute there, and I thought we could have talked for like 6 hours. honestly. I mean, that was a very special conversation because she is so into the alumni like you are, that it's very amazing, and she's got a lot of ideas just like you expressed. So the current highest tier of members of current membership is very much aware of it, and we're very grateful for that. I have a few other things to cover in the written portion, and I have a few other things to cover in off air, as it were, here, that I do want to share with you, just as something that I want to do for everybody, that I have a chance to converse with. So I think for the rolled portion, I think we're gonna wrap this up now. I do have to get ready for the next one also before I show up with Elena, who's actually our next interviewee, totally unprepared, and then I'm going to look bad if I'm not prepared for her, because then she's going to say we're practicing favoritism for you. So keep me out of trouble with that one. But I also have lunch that's waiting for me, and I don't want to get in trouble for that. So I will tell you that we cannot adequately express our gratitude for the way that all of you candidates have not only prioritized the role of alumni, but we mentioned the pride in representing your college to the community. We bring it back to that point. The pride with which you represent your institution is best indicated, best shown. The best way you demonstrate that pride is the class and professionalism by which you conduct yourself while going about your everyday career, going about your everyday responsibilities. And honestly, it's not just professional, it's professionalism in fact and appearance both. And I will tell you, when I went to the officer page, to the candidate page before the convention, I said, I mean, wow, you guys are great. You guys did a great job with representing yourselves and coming soon to a boardroom near you, is what it looked like. So you guys deserve a lot of applause for that in and of itself, but it's professionalism in fact as well. You are, as students, professional in the context of you guys are doing exactly what you're supposed to do, and you have a tremendous amount of respect and empathy for your audience. And so I guess what I would ask you is, I asked you for your statement to alumni, but my statement to you on behalf of the alumni would be, regardless of whatever endeavors you choose, don't lose the zeal that you have. And to me, as I've said this to everybody, it's hard. You can't lose that. Once it starts in you, it can't stop. But just thank you for possessing that zeal. Don't ever let that fire recede or go out, and make sure to do whatever you can to kindle that fire in others.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck to you and the officer team.
Thank you so much. And to you guys as well.
All right, so we'll stop rolling, and then I'll have a couple things I want to just get to you off air quickly. So thank you very much, Victoria, and we ask you to stay tuned for our next interview with Elena. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.